Hello and welcome to another exciting episode as we consider religion in Australia for the studies of religion for Year 11. Today we're going to move into Catholicism and look at two significant figures from the early church for Catholicism. We're thinking Caroline Chisholm, that woman who appeared on the $5 note for many, many years, and Mary Mackillop, the one who was beatified and even canonised recently. Two very important figures. Let's go and have a look at both these ladies. What's your image of Catholicism? Is it this image that we see here? Girls sitting in a school taught by nuns? What is your image, particularly from those early times? Or are you reminded of the $5 note? And this is up until 1992, this $5 note existed, with this woman on the side and a number of women and a boat. Who is this woman? Well, it happens to be Caroline Chisholm. From my understanding, if you went to school before 1990s, you probably actually learnt a little bit about her, but I don't hear as much about her today. In fact, she started off as an Anglican raised by philanthropic, that means people who give away and look to care for the poor and the weak, evangelicals, people who believe the Bible. But then she married this lieutenant, Archibald Chisholm, in the army, navy, Roman Catholic. That was a big no-no. How dare you do that, Caroline, would be what the people would say. But Caroline loved this man. She actually said, though, I'll marry on one condition, that I can keep doing this philanthropic work that I'm doing. You let me do that, I'll marry you. And so, yeah, they got married. She went to India initially, but then we see her turn up in Australia and settles into Windsor in 1838. But she looks around and she sees these women walking down the street, destitute, nowhere to go, often quite capable women, sometimes those women that were rejected by society. And so she decided to take the women in and try and find them work in the country. This led to her establishing immigrant houses where people could go and live. But you see this picture here. This house looks okay, but not really. You see these houses were drafty, constantly wind going through, cold. Windsor in the middle of winter, cold, cold, cold. But worse than that, they had rats everywhere. There's stories of her putting out like little bowls of water so the rats would come and drink and then go away. And she looked down at them and hoped that they would just drink the water and she wouldn't see them later. And she often sometimes did, and she left them alone, they left her alone. That was her theory. It wasn't easy, though, for her. She was a Catholic in the early colony where, well, they didn't like Catholic sectarianism, such an issue. So she decided she wanted to actually set it up and work out from England how to get things working well. She goes back and sets up the Family Colonisation Loan Society. To secure support, she went and had meetings, as you can see. Here's a brochure for one, about female immigration. What Australia needed most in her view were good and virtuous women. Now she herself, it seems from history, didn't really get too caught up on whether the women were Catholic or Anglican or what they were, or what they believed. But there were guys like J.D. Lang, John Dunmore Lang from the Presbyterian Church. He sometimes worked with her wanting to emigrate, but he wanted to emigrate Scottish Presbyterian ministers because he saw that as the way to help society. And so he was opposed to her because he thought she was just trying to get Irish Catholics. That sectarianism really came through strongly, unfortunately, in this particular area. She was so successful in her work, though. At one point in her work, she actually managed to settle 11,000 women throughout New South Wales in those country areas. Wow. No wonder she went on to that $5 note. So what about the other woman that I want to look at? Mary Mackillop joined the Sisters of St. Joseph because she'd been raised, it seems, by a father who'd trained for the priesthood. She'd been involved or gone to private schools, but mainly her father's influence and others, where she wanted to care for the poor. So she joined the Sisters of St. Joseph of the Sacred Heart under a guy by the name of Julian Tennyson Woods. And their motto was, their mission was to live in poverty, dedicated to educating poor children. And so she did this for quite some time, caring for them, looking after them. However, she was appointed as the superior of a number of schools, but there was conflict between Tennyson Woods and the bishops, and so one of the other guys wanted to see it all closed, and so in 1871 she was actually excommunicated from the church. 9 days before this bishop died, he reinstated her, and she went around Rome and other areas in Europe looking at schools, learning about education. And so in 1875, back in Australia, she's appointed Superior General of the Sisterhood and establishes many schools for many years after this. As I've said there, she's beatified in 1995 and finally canonised, the first canon in Australia. Lady, not just lady, but Saint Mary Mackillop in 2010. Look, we don't know a lot more about her except this, and so not a lot to say about sectarianism, for example, but about education and caring for the poor. Wow, we can see her work here. Obviously greatly concerned. Of course, these two people aren't the only two for Catholicism, and I'll do another video on Daniel Mannix, that controversial bishop of Melbourne. But hopefully this one helps you just understand Catholicism just that little bit better. Apologies to anyone who knows more about this than me. I must admit it's based on my own research just conducted over the last few days. But I hope this helps you. Have a good one. See you later.